Joining me now to analyze the issue of the day is Akeregha. He is a public affairs analyst and a member of the Nigerian Guild of Editors. Thank you for coming, Iyo.
Yeah, good evening. It's a pleasure to be here.
So you've been listening to our discussion earlier. How do you feel as a Nigerian that now you're required to pay much more? Between last year and this year, it's over 400% increase in the cost of fuel.
Well, I think petrol politics has become an albatross on the neck of Nigerians since, if you look at the period that we have been having instability in the sector, I think it dates back to 1999 when we then said democracy was the best option for us and we embraced it. With President Obasanjo increased petroleum prices for about 3-4 times. I recall vividly that I got so livid at the time that I had to approach the Federal High Court in Abuja to sue the president at the time. And after about 9 months, the court dismissed that action on the premise that I lacked locus to sue the president, that he had immunity. So we thought that would be the end of it. But looking historically between then and now, it became even worse from last year when President Bola Ahmed Tinubu took power at a time that he promised renewed hope for Nigerians. When the 8 years of President Buhari's tenure, we thought that we have had the worst, and then the president on the first day that he was taking office told Nigerians that fuel subsidy was gone, because before then the argument had been that petroleum subsidy was hurting the economy, it was creating problems for everyone, that there was a need to take it off the table. So the three leading presidential candidates at the time, candidate Tinubu, Peter Obi, and Atiku Abubakar, they all spoke around the issue, what they would do, the strategies they will adopt if they become president with fuel subsidy and all of that. But for Tinubu, on day one, he said subsidy was gone. And so Nigerians heaved a sigh of relief. And then there was cost-reflective prices after that announcement, and Nigerians were made to pay more. But after then, we just discovered that everybody has lost his or her sleep, and we just don't understand what is happening anymore in that sector. It's a whole lot of problem. But what I hear now is quite alarming. Yeah, it's quite alarming. First, if you look at the politics around the issue, once the sector was deregulated, Dangote had announced that he was ready to come on stream. The NNPC, which is, of course, a government monopoly that had become a private limited liability company, started buying off private petrol stations around the country. For me, I was alarmed. Why would NNPC be buying off petroleum distribution outlets privately owned by individuals? So we thought that was going to bring some relief and succor to Nigeria. But for me now, as a journalist, I now see that there could be more that meets the eye with that action that the NNPC took. Right. Now the NNPC then approached Dangote, struck a deal with Dangote Refinery that they were going to be the only off-taker of petroleum products. And at the time that Nigerians were asking questions, what will be the ultimate price of a liter of fuel? Dangote will say, NNPC will respond to that. When you go to NNPC will pass it back to
Right. So I think this speaks to the lack of transparency in the industry that Nigerians have been asking for. Yes. A lot of secrecy. So how do you feel about that lack of transparency?
Yeah, the opaqueness is something that is worrisome. Before I came into the studio, I want to shock Nigerians. That as we speak, there are vessels loaded with petroleum, that's with fuel, refined fuel, coming from Mauritius to Nigeria. And nobody is telling Nigerians what is happening. So the government, that is NNPC itself, is importing fuel. They are on the high seas now, approaching the shores of Nigeria. So all of this, I see it as a drama to raise the prices, to benefit those that are importing this fuel. That is just basically what is going on. It's exclusive, and I'm sure that by next week, 2 weeks from now, we'll see that those vessels would have arrived. Because if you look, NNPC is also saying that they are no longer going to be the middlemen to off-taker from. So where is NNPC going to get the fuel to sell across? So they are importing fuel and then leaving the private. I heard Billy is the man who spoke before I came in, saying that he's the president of. So I wonder where now they're asking all of them to go to to Dangote refinery to get fuel.
Well, and I was going to ask him that in the deregulated market, it should be competitive. That means there are different companies selling the product, and so you also have the option of prices because of that. But it seems like we will have a deregulated market, but not a competitive market.
Well, I doubt if it's deregulated. So why will I also hear the government saying that anybody could get licenses to import fuel if you want to import fuel. So why do we at some point we all thought that with Dangote refinery promised that they had the capacity to produce and supply fuel to cover the entire country. So for me, I do not really think that we need to import fuel, except the fuel import is benefiting some people. So the politics around that issue is covered with a whole lot of opaqueness and lack of transparency.
Okay, so given the fluctuating nature of global oil prices, how might international events and geopolitics affect this? I think that's where we are now.
Yes, that's where it will appear that is where we are. Yes, international geopolitics and international politics around oil prices. If you look at even the instability in the Middle East and all of that, there's argument around the issue that is going to adversely affect the pump prices of fuel. But some countries will be able to cope with it because energy security is a fundamental issue, it's a fundamental responsibility of any serious government. You cannot leave it open at a time that also the government has floated the naira. Once you float the naira, you have also substantially devalued your local currency. So it has lost the capability and capacity to compete with other currencies of the world. So when people argue that, even if you buy petrol for 1,030 naira, as the NNPC say now, that it is still less than maybe $1 and all of that. They forget that the multimodal transport system and the advanced infrastructure system in those countries that want to compare Nigeria with, it is just not possible to do those comparisons. So those numbers do not add up. And I think that, and of course, if you also compare that or look at that against the backdrop that there's multi-dimensional poverty in Nigeria, and Nigerians are rated over 65% of the population is regarded as being very poor, that they are suffering from multi-dimensional poverty, then it means that we cannot really compete.
As a citizen, what's more important to you, availability or cost? Because, our first guest was talking about availability. Once it's available, Nigerians are ready to pay any amount.
I beg to disagree with those the proponents of the principle or the concept of availability. If we produce crude oil, if we have crude oil in abundance in Nigeria, the NNPC has 4 refineries, and for years on end, the NNPC has been unable to get one of the refineries running and producing. And then, so for me, the issue of availability is tied to artificial scarcity of the product. The people just want to create artificial scarcity and then come to blackmail people that, look, let's make the product available. Nigerians are ready to buy it for any amount. I do not agree that poor people can buy petrol per liter for any amount because you create artificial scarcity around it so that the prices can go up. So I disagree with the proponents of that argument.
Let's look at the context of, look at it in the context of the minimum wage. I think that's one of the reasons why the Nigerian Labour Congress over the past few months have been fighting for a better wage for workers. Now it's 70,000 naira. What are we looking at here? It's going to be a crisis for a lot of people, at least for a couple of months or years before everything stabilizes.
Well, 70,000 naira has been put on the table as the national minimum wage. Is the federal government even paying the 70,000 naira now? I heard the president the other day announce that arrears were going to be paid, I think 2-3 months arrears. But as a journalist, I then found out that the federal government has just selected a few agencies, MDAs, and they are paying that. So while most of the states are yet to pay, apart from Edo State, which announced that they were ready to pay 70,000 naira 3 weeks to the gubernatorial election in the state. A lot of people read meanings to that was politically driven. So with the incoming administration in Edo State, we wait to see whether they can sustain that promise. But overall, I think that even if 70,000 naira is paid to an average Nigerian worker, the question is, and then you pay a bit of transport allowance, housing and all of that for a family of 4, man, a wife and 2 children. Can anybody reasonably say at this point that a Nigerian can even survive with 200,000 naira? The answer is a clear no. You just cannot survive. At a point that a bag of rice is approaching 100,000 naira. So the arguments are just there. And if you have to commute to work every day and spend about between 4,000 and 5,000 naira, depending on the distance, of your work, at a period that the government is also not providing buses. The federal government has promised that there will be CNG buses. All kinds of promises have been made. We don't see anything on the ground, to lend credence to the fact that the government is actually serious in ameliorating or, driving down the poverty level of Nigerians.
Even if you have the CNG buses, you would need a lot of it.
Absolutely.
It's not just a couple.
Exactly.
And it has to be across the country. You have 36 states.
Absolutely.
There are people that live not only in the cities, because it looks like the focus is, the urban centers. Yeah. There are also people that live outside the urban center. And so it's a lot of work that needs to be done, yes. Isn't it?
Yes, absolutely. And even if you look at the nation's capital, where I don't see the CNG buses anywhere. So if Abuja, which is the nation's capital, does not have it, Lagos does not have it, Kano, Port Harcourt, some of these major urban centers, those are the productive centers of the country. They don't have. So where are you going to find the CNG buses? And the government keep pushing through this policy. People are saying, bear with the country, bear with the government. It will be better. We have a country to be. I do not agree that when you hire people to do a job and the people are lacking clear capacity to deliver on what they have promised to do, you keep retaining them and they're thinking that things are going to get better. Nigeria is not an isolated country. How other countries manage, how other countries run, that they're able to weather their economic policies and drive the economic policies through such that there is macroeconomic stability in those countries. So is Nigeria a different country where every other week Nigerians are made to contend with fluctuating petrol prices that, of course, adversely affect every other sector of the Nigerian economy, whether it is the formal or informal sector, it is adversely affected. So it is the government really need to sit down and look at these issues pragmatically and deal with them.
Well, is this an issue of capacity though? Because during the elections, all the candidates had said they would do the same thing, which is remove subsidy. So they were going to remove it anyway. So are we talking about capacity, or are we talking about the policies, the policy decision?
It's about strategy and timing. I listened to Peter Obi and Atiku Abubakar. They didn't just say that with a whiff and the rule of the thumb that they were going to strike down subsidy. If you look, as I said earlier, governments around the world, they pay a lot of premium to energy security, social security, and all of that, because that is what guarantees your own internal security. When people are unable to feed themselves, there's tendency for them to migrate towards corruption. When people are unable to pay their bills, people will tend to gravitate towards corruption, look for other ways of paying their bills. Beyond even petrol, we're also looking at electricity costs. Many Nigerians have been lumped into band A, even without their permission, without their consent. You lump them in, and then you say 1,000 naira will give you about 1.04 units of electricity. Then, of course, you also look at the value of the naira that is almost no longer competitive with even currencies within the West African sub-region. All of this put together are factors mitigating against even government policy of moving people away from poverty, in comparison to China that takes 100,000 Chinese out of poverty every year. So if you look at that, what are they doing differently? The Chinese came to Agadez in Niger Republic, and they were able to build a refinery there, construct pipelines that runs from Agadez to Benin Republic to Togo, and they're able to refine fuel and supply those countries. So what are they doing differently that we are unable to do here? And as I said earlier, people are still importing fuel. Vessels are on their way from Mauritius into the country, and are now here rather than the NNPC you know, actually the reason why, of course, the Port Harcourt refinery has not taken off. I understand they are trying to transform it into a blending plant. So it is not going to be a refining plant. They want to blend, they just want to mix a few things, which can be done ship to ship. So there is a whole lot of opaqueness in that sector, and they are not telling Nigerians the truth.
So it means that there is a problem here with thinking, you know, because you have to take time to think through all the policy decisions, how to manage, you know, everything, which is why we are where we are today.
Yes, I agree with you that people need to sit down and think, and we have, as it is the government that should be doing the thinking on behalf of Nigerians. And then the issue is suggestions have been made about how we can get out of this quagmire that we have found ourselves. It doesn't appear that we are making progress. We seem to be proceeding in error with every policy, particularly economic policies that this government is putting in place. And the social contract between the people of Nigeria and the government is for the government to deliver democracy dividend to the people. The people are not seeing it. And I heard the last interviewer that you spoke to, you asked a question if he thought that people would protest, and he was saying he was advising against protest. How do you push a people continually and you say people will not protest? I also know that the government has put in place, you know, strategies to try and stamp down protests, you know, arrest people, slam terrorism charges on Nigerians who protest. But I wonder for how long that this will work, because these politics that are coming
I was
through.
going to ask, do you think people will be pushed to the wall so much that it gets to a point that they will actually go out and protest?
I think so.
It looks like Nigerians always adjust to any difficulties, any hardship. You know, people complain for a couple of weeks and they adjust and life moves on. Do you see anything different coming in the following month?
Yeah, why protests will not be good for our economy and the country at this time? I doubt if the government will be able to stop people from protesting. Now you wake up in the morning with your family and there's just nothing to eat. The children are unable to go to school. People are not able to access health care. You can't even pay your electricity bills, not to talk of even commuting. Farmers who go to farm cannot bring their produce. If they do bring their produce to the market, the prices will be affected because the cost of transportation, you know, the input will be there. So people at some point, yes, Nigerians are very resilient people. They are very tolerant. It has been wrongly read that Nigerians are complacent, that they will not, no matter what you do, that they will just, as you said, that they will take it hook, line and sinker. But I doubt if this is going to subsist for too long, because Nigerians, I think they have gotten to their tetanus end.
How do you think this policy will affect the different socioeconomic groups? It seems like it's going to widen the gap.
No, absolutely. In the past, you hear of the middle class, maybe the lower class, and then the upper class. But for long, the middle class has been wiped out. There is now, what you just have the elite class. Of course, they are very few in number. And the sensitivity of the elite class is can be called to question. Again, this is happening at a time that you find the Nigerian elite buying new cars, building big houses for themselves with billions of naira. Recently, the president also acquired a brand new jet for $150 million that is flying around. You know, when you see your leaders doing this, then of course the people get irritated and they get also agitated. So for how long the people will think this is also a subject for another conversation. But I doubt if Nigerians, this new price, 1,030 naira, which the NNPC is pegging this price, I think it is just an intolerable price. Nigerians cannot bear it at a time that even the 70,000 naira has, the value itself has been wiped off, even with this macroeconomic inflation that is occurring.
Yes, I was also going to ask if you see this affecting inflation as well. You know, we're already at over 40% inflation. The same thing with food inflation. Yeah. How is this going to pan out?
You know, well, already everybody can feel the pain. You know, it is stinging everyone. Food inflation is high. Inflation for goods and services is also very, very high. And that is one that has also encouraged most young Nigerians to leave the country to seek greener pastures elsewhere. But for those that are here, don't forget, Nigeria is a country of well over 225 million people, with the rough estimates that we have had. So we have a huge number of people that appear, for me, I want to use a social language, that appear to be trapped in Nigeria. They have not, they can't get out, they can't just go anywhere. So this huge number of people who are underserved by the government, at some point they might just react. But the appeal is that the government must not wait for that time for people to react before they really sit down to say, look, this is getting too much. Because the management of the oil and gas sector is crucial. Now, if you look at between 2020 and 2022, former President Muhammadu Buhari announced that about 1 billion barrels of crude has been found in the Komani area in between Bauchi and Gombe State, you know, and that 500 million, you know, cubic meters of gas is also of commercial quality is also found in those areas. So what has happened? A lot of money, public resources, public funds were ploughed in exploration activities during the period under review. So, but nobody is saying anything about it. We also know that recently Lagos State said they have discovered crude in large quantity, oil in large quantity. Everybody is keeping quiet. So why is there so much politics around crude that, you know, Dangote is complaining that enough crude is not sold to the refinery for that plant to run in full capacity? So why is there so much opaqueness? You say you discover a large quantity of oil reserves somewhere, a lot of public funds is sunk there, and nobody says anything about it. Monies are ploughed to refine, to recalibrate the refineries and get them to work. The last one I remember is 1.5 billion naira for the Port Harcourt refinery, and it is still not working, and the questions are not being asked. So what is really happening? Okay. These are fundamental issues.
Akeregha, thank you so much for joining us on the program.
It's a pleasure.
Thank you. Well, that's it for this edition of Arise Prime Time. Do join us again tomorrow. From me and the entire team here in Abuja, goodbye and thank you for watching.